The news couldn't be more bleak for Chicago Public Schools. According to the Chicago Public School District, enrollment dropped by 3.5% this year. That's a loss of 13,000 students, which is more than double what the district predicted. It follows a decade-long pattern of student exits. Published reports say CPS is blaming the loss on declining birth rates, a slower influx of undocumented workers, and African-American families leaving Chicago. But there has also been great instability, including mass school closings last year, deep budget cuts, and a teacher strike in 2012.
What do we want? A fair contract! When do we want it? Now!
CPS is also facing a pension shortfall of close to $10 billion due to a mismanagement of funds. Ted Dabrowski, the Vice President of Policy at the Illinois Policy Institute, says for years, CPS failed to make pension payments.
What's not talked about is where that money went, and that money continued to go into higher and higher teacher salaries and administrative salaries. And so as those salaries went up, the obligations in the pension fund went up even faster.
According to the Illinois Policy Institute, the average salary for a Chicago public school teacher is nearly $73,000. Those with 10 to 14 years experience are paid around $84,000 a year. The average retirement age is 61, with an estimated pension of $72,000 a year. The average career teacher will collect $2.1 million in pension benefits over the course of retirement. Currently, CPS teachers pay just 2% of the 9% pension contributions required by their contract. CPS picks up the remaining 7%. The financial burden has been passed on to taxpayers, who have been saddled with tax hikes to cover the cost, while seeing little movement to fix a broken system.
I don't think it's fair to tax the people more to get the crisis taken care of. They should try to find other ways around it.
It's really a tough situation because the politicians screwed up. They're going to blame the teachers, and the teachers can do better and they can be more efficient, and the whole CPS can be more efficient.
This is something that both ends have to just come to the table and negotiate on.
And to cap it all off, Moody's Investor Service dropped the district's credit rating further into junk status.
Who's really left out of this discussion are the children and the parents. They're the ones that should be in charge. Parents should be the drivers of what's going on. I think what's dramatically wrong is that the union, who claims they care about the kids, is willing one more time to strike against the kids and put the kids out of school in order to demand more money from the taxpayers who are already struggling to begin with.
Earlier this week, I sat down with President of the Civic Federation, Lawrence Massal, to discuss where CPS goes from here. Lawrence, the Civic Federation provides detailed analysis and recommendations on government finance issues. So how would you at this point characterize the financial conditions of CPS?
The financial condition of the Chicago Public Schools is not good. It can be seen in their junk bond status. They're less than investment grade by the rating agencies. They still have a very significant budget deficit. Even though they received some extraordinary help from the state of Illinois and from Mayor Emanuel in terms of allowing for a property tax increase to help stabilize their pensions, they still are hundreds of millions of dollars short in what they need for their operating budget.
So you brought up the state. Do we see the state coming in and rescuing it at this point, or no more from the state?
No, I think everyone is looking to the state of Illinois to resolve its financial crisis as well. The state has been operating for almost 2 years without a budget. That has an enormous cost on the Chicago Public Schools, the city of Chicago, and every other government or anyone else who depends on the state. So the state needs to come together, the state leaders in Springfield and the governor, and pass a budget. It's something that every other state in the United States has, a budget, and that's how you manage a government, with a budget. Without a budget, the state of Illinois is incurring literally billions of dollars more than it has available in revenue.
Now, you brought up the recent property tax hike, which is a lot on taxpayers. Can we expect, considering the situation that we're facing with CPS, more tax hikes for the taxpayers?
Well, it's very difficult for the Chicago Public Schools to look at how they're going to close their deficit without some significant help from the state, in addition to what was already provided. Basically, they were given authority, the city of Chicago, to raise property taxes by about $250 million. The city already provides to the Chicago Public Schools, the city taxpayers, about $2.5 billion. So that's in effect a 10% increase in the property tax revenue. But even that's not enough to close the deficit. The state of Illinois needs to get its financial house in order, stabilize its government, increase its credit rating to reduce the borrowing costs for the state of Illinois and local governments, and provide reasonable assistance and predictability for all the other local governments, including the Chicago Public Schools.
So what about the debate over the pensions and the contributions that the teachers are facing? What should happen there?
There, it's a case where the teachers are on the wrong side of history in opposing paying for their own pensions. Every other unit of government, whether it's the city with its firemen or policemen, the employees contribute to their pensions. In a quirk, back in 1982, the Chicago Public Schools decided that they would not have the teachers make their employee contribution, and now it totals about 7% of the 9% employee contribution. Every other government does that. It'd be different if the Chicago Public Schools was flush with resources, but it's not, and it can't afford that generous benefit. Yes, it will be a reduction in the disposable income for teachers, but it's a reasonable share. But the taxpayers have just contributed $250 million more in terms of the teachers' pension fund. More is going to be needed. There's going to have to be joint sacrifice.
We've seen enrollment drop. We've seen more layoffs at CPS. This affects the families, this affects the children that go there. What are the consequences then of a strike?
The consequences of a strike can be very severe. We've seen in the past when Chicago had a history of constant teacher strikes that enrollment drops dramatically. It's not just a strike, it's the uncertainty and the constant uncertainty as to whether your kids are going to have a place to go to school, whether they're going to be provided for, or whether people are going to have to make and look and explore other options. It has a result in not only driving people to other options, perhaps private schools and parochial schools, but it also has the effect of driving people out of the city if they don't think there's a stable public school system. The Chicago Public Schools have made enormous strides in terms of the quality of the educational experience in the last 15 years. It would be a shame to see those improvements denigrated by a protracted strike that drove population out of the city or drove parents to look to other alternatives. Even without the strike, the Chicago Public Schools are reporting that they've lost about 12,000 students this year from the same time last year. That's at a time when the cost of the Chicago Public Schools is rising and its student population is dropping. That's untenable.
The Civic Federation has criticized CPS transparency in the past. So what do you think can be done to improve that?
Oh, they can come up with a long-term plan. This budget that is an emergency budget that Forrest Claypool and the Chicago Public Schools have approved has some big holes in it. It relies on significant concessions from the teacher's contract, including the give back on the pension contribution. It relies on significant funding from Springfield, a promise of over $200 million if the governor and the legislature reach consensus on a pension reform proposal. We can't even find details of what that proposal would be, let alone whether they will reach consensus. So the Chicago Public Schools would benefit the city, the teachers, the students, the parents, if they laid out what Plan B is if they don't get those. Unfortunately, what Plan B looks to appear is very significant and dramatic cuts in terms of the employment roles, the teacher roles, and without a systematic way of evaluating how to make those cuts.
Lawrence Masal, thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you very much.